And our book review, Hot Tea and Apricots, it is a memoir of loss and hope by Kim Ballantine, who documents a 15-year battle of voice loss and cancer. Well, she was told that she'd never speak again after being diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia. And now many years later, she has a voice back and she has a story to tell. There is so much more to Kim's story, and you'll need to listen to this interview. Get your hands on her new book as well, Hot Tea and Apricots, obviously to divulge a little bit further in her journey. But on that note, we're going to welcome her in studio. Kim, good morning, and thank you for joining us at this hour.
Good morning, Liesl. Thank you for having me.
We was chatting offline, and I was saying you look radiant, you look peaceful, and you don't look like you've undergone such tremendous trauma. And I just wonder, for people who are not privy to what happened, we can start at the beginning. Perhaps let's start with being diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia, what that entails. How did you receive that news and navigate that?
So spasmodic dysphonia, for those who don't know, is when the messages from the brain to the vocal complex no longer work correctly. So you end up with a very staccatoed speech, and my vocal cords also would go into laryngeal spasms, so I couldn't breathe. So when we eventually ended up in a specialist's office being told this was chronic, in other words, there was no cure, this was a permanent diagnosis, my whole world imploded. I was an industrial psychologist working in industry. Everything's related to voice.
Absolutely. And I'm just learning about, I'm thinking about how you had to learn new modes of communication. I'm assuming writing became a pivotal part of your journey, sign language, learning that as well. How did you navigate that?
Yes, with difficulty. So we did get a sign language teacher.
Okay.
And that was my mode of communication, particularly with my children. My husband wasn't in those lessons. So writing became absolutely critical. And then teaching people to lip read, to look at my mouth, not my eyes. Because when we communicate, we look at eyes, not mouths.
And so navigating that, you then also get diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
That is compounded trauma. What was going through your mind when you got that news? How did you dig deep and overcome that?
So the cancer diagnosis was absolutely shattering. I never expected that at all. I had breast cancer. And so my message also is early detection saves lives. It's Women's Month, Breast Cancer Month, so go for those mammograms and examinations. But the news was devastating. And I think, how did I dig deep? I think just my faith in God definitely is what got me through. If I wasn't true to that or mentioned that, I would just be inauthentic to the whole journey. So really a deep faith in my God. And also knowing that regardless of outcomes, that I could trust him. For me, that was absolutely pivotal.
The why me questions would also come about. And I wonder, during that dark night of the soul, there are many terms that people coin it, but how are you navigating that as well?
So the why me does come up. And I remember saying that once to my husband, why me?
Yeah.
Signing to him. And he just said, why not you? We're not exempt from suffering. And so rather than asking the why me, just how are you going to navigate this? And there's the choice. We can be victims and stay in that why me. And I think that can be a very significant trap that we hooked into. Or actually, how am I going to navigate this? I have choice in how I respond to this trauma.
Choice, agency, when would that tipping point have happened for you though?
So I think probably into almost the second year. My husband and I ended up at Monte Cassino navigating our relationship and just realizing that I couldn't choose what had happened, but I certainly could choose how I was going to respond, and making decisions around maintaining our faith, maintaining our relationship and our connection, being honest with the children, and actually choosing our attitude. And gratitude doesn't change what you see, but it certainly changes how you see and how you navigate things.
How would you link the title to the themes of the book? And if people are going to pick up a copy on the back of what you've echoed now, what would you ultimately want them to walk away with as well?
So the title is beautiful, Hot Tea and Apricots. I alluded to the fact I was in top-end consulting.
Yes.
And one of the managers in an organization used to meet with me afterwards when I had no voice and I had just choked all over him, spluttered coffee. And I said to him, why do you do this? And he said he'd been climbing Mount Elbrus. He didn't think he was going to make it. And at one point his Sherpa stopped and gave him hot tea and apricots. And because of that, he said he summited. And he said, maybe that's all this is for you. one day you will come through our doors again, and maybe all I'm doing is offering you hot tea and apricots. So the message, the book title really is the hope that it would be hot tea and apricots to others who are going through their own traumas, difficult journeys. But I think my primary message is to never negate your faith, never give up on that, and never give up on hope. Always dream beyond the confines of now.
What would the creative process have looked like for you, having to relive the events and tell your story at large? I mean, do you realize some of the gaps, some of the unlearnings, learnings that you had to do, the more healing that had to come as a result?
Liesl, it was tough.
I can imagine.
It was tough. You know, I wrote prolifically because my husband couldn't understand signs. So a lot of what you're reading in the book is what was written in the moment. The dialogue was captured then. The stories with my children, because I wanted him involved in my world. So going back was difficult, but I used it as my therapy. I just said, God, I'm opening my heart. I'm going back into these dark places, and I'm just asking that you walk this journey again with me, and that you bring healing into those unnavigated spaces. So tough, but I think it was definitely my therapy, and I think it's been pivotal for my family. Reading it, going through it again, remembering, because trauma often impacts your memory. So being able to go back, relive, and work through as a family some of those dark places.
And trust the process. The process is the purpose. I've run out of time. I've got so many more questions, but I guess all that's left to do is obviously to encourage everyone to pick up the book. But thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing your story. And just wishing you all the best of luck. I know that your work now revolves around motivational speaking, psychology at large. So you're obviously purpose-driven through what you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you. And the book is in exclusive books and all good bookstores.
All right. Kim Ballantine joining us bright and early this morning. Hot tea and apricots. As you heard, it is a memoir of loss and hope by Kim Ballantine, and the story explores one woman's journey through this uncharted territory and her eventual victory through tenacity and faith. Again, thank you to Kim for joining us.